to start the episode with the ksk of a beer can opening, but I'm drinking bourbon right now. I actually wish that I had the foresight to get Irish whiskey for today's episode, or some kind of Easter
Guinness?
whiskey maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Guinness.
I mean,
Don't-
what you could do, Tyler, since I can hear the ice in your glass, you can kind of put that close to the mic and then have like clink, 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 clink.
I can hear the clinking clinks a bit, yeah.
There we
So
go.
there you go.
Yeah.
And now that is how we do a quarantine intro, my friends.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're the History Boys, guys. Recording
We are.
remotely.
we are the History Boys. This is remote recording number 2.
Yeah. Sorry, I still
Hopefully
sound
audio
not great.
is... Yeah, hopefully the recording is better.
We're doing a little different than last time.
I think any recording's gonna sound real sweet when Zach gets his
Ooh.
mitts on it.
Gets his just big, scaly mitts. So I'm Chris Whedon, and guys, I don't know about you, but I'm a history boy.
I'm Zach Meck, and I'm also a bit of a history boy.
I'm Jerry Nash, and I'm also a history boy.
And I'm Tyler, and I'm definitely a history boy.
Big time Tyler history boy.
Turns
Don't
out.
get me started. Jerry, you know what I think's cool? Rebellion, revolutions, and do you have a story like that?
I do, indeed.
Is it a
this
sad
one,
story?
Yeah,
They
this is kind
generally
of sad.
can be. Sad things happen.
Yeah.
You know?
But this story is it's like Star Wars as fuck.
Oh,
You got British bad guys, you got scrappy rebels. It's got a little bit of everything.
you got
And it's kind of the first episode of a larger saga in a lot of ways.
So this
In
is
a
the
lot of
Phantom
ways,
Menace.
yeah.
What was that, Zach?
I asked if this was the Phantom Menace.
I would say it's more like Rogue One.
yeah. Well, there you go.
Mostly in the fact that all the important characters die in the end.
Whoa, spoiler alert.
Spoilers! Holy
I
shit.
mean,
Not in
sorry.
Rogue One. Who cares? I'm talking about this story.
I mean, is there a moratorium on spoilers? That's like I mean, like it's been 100 years.
I don't. As far as Rogue One, you're good. As far as the 1916 Easter Rising, you're not so good. Jerry,
Talk about spoilers. Jared, do you want to tell us a little bit about today's story?
Yeah, as Chris said, today we're talking about the Easter Rising of 1916 in Ireland.
And just throwing it out there really quick, this was actually a fan suggestion.
Yes,
So
it was.
thank you very much. When you see this episode going up, I don't know if we're gonna throw out the names of fans, if that's the right thing to do. But here we go. No, I'm just kidding.
here's their address.
but
and it
but
was
when you
hard
see
to
the
find.
episode go up, if you've been on social media, you know who you are. We know who you are, and we want to thank you very much for your suggestion. This is a great story, and we can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I
thank
don't want to
you.
put you on blast, but thank you so much for this suggestion. On Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, around 1,250 men and women in Dublin mainly took up arms against their British oppressors for independence. Among them were teachers, poets, journalists, intellectuals, soldiers, and activists. The complexities of this story are polarizing to this day.
I just want to point out that when I was doing my research, which involved watching a documentary on YouTube, amongst other things, but mostly that, it was narrated by Liam Neeson. It was very good, but I feel like he put a specific emphasis on one of the rebel fighters being an actor.
Yeah.
And I thought it
about
was
right.
really
He's like-
funny.
So
Yeah.
this guy
He's like,
has
"See?"
the most honorable job of all time.
Yeah, he's like, see, we're important guys too.
The truest heroes of all, the actors, according to Liam Neeson.
So some background. For over 700 years of British rule and over 800 years of just British domination, Ireland languished under the Crown's iron fist. The native Irish were considered subhuman to the Anglo-Saxons, so they were used as cannon fodder in Britain's mini military engagements across the globe.
So there's some racists.
Oh yeah,
Big
oh,
time.
for sure.
Yeah. Turns out white people can be racist against other white people.
Yeah, we'll find a way, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If white people have mastered the art of being racist.
Oh, yeah. And subjugation.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Irish language, Gaelic predominantly, and culture was being snuffed out to make room for the quote-unquote civilized English language and culture. They were viewed as dirty, uncivilized, stupid people who had too many children that they couldn't care for, without ever considering that their own policies towards the Irish could be to blame for their abject poverty.
That sounds so familiar. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're like,
Seriously.
why are they all so poor and gross? Let's not give them any money.
Hey, do you think when bad things
Yeah.
happened in England, they blamed it on the Irish?
Yeah.
So those Irish, we need to
Yeah.
build a wall across the water there.
Yeah, because the aristocracy and like fucking like all the rich people were screwing over all the poor people, and then they just told the poor people that it was the Irish that were doing it to them, and then they got mad at the Irish, and you know,
Yeah.
oldest trick in
Well-
the book.
Yeah, something else that sounds familiar is that the English also never really acknowledged that the Irish were integral to the British imperial and colonial machine. Like when they would go to like India and these, places that they were colonizing, guess who most of their soldiers were?
Irish.
They were Irish. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, if you keep them poor enough through subjugation, and then the only option to have any kind of leg up in the world is to do your bidding, then you essentially get free army.
Hey, you might be poor, but you can always join the army.
Hey, that sounds very, very familiar.
Yeah. In Ulster, in the north of Ireland, the British used a colonial plantation tactic to cement a population that was loyal to the crown, and their religion, of course. The north of Ireland would be better off economically for their loyalty, and the Protestant religion is historically at odds with the Catholic religion, which is what most of the rest of the Irish believed in.
Right.
I feel like I learned about that in the X-Men cartoon.
Probably. In the late 1700s, the ideology of the Enlightenment empowered nations of the world to throw off their chains of monarchical rule in exchange for a representative democracy, otherwise known as a republic, allowing for self-governance. Ireland looked to places like the United States and France and were inspired by their revolutions and their ideals of égalité, fraternité, and liberté.
The French got it started, and then we picked up the ball, and turns out everybody hates being ruled by an empire.
Oh, I thought you were going to say everyone hates the English.
Oh, that
Also
too.
true.
Historically
as I was saying-
speaking.
I was just saying, there's a reason why all the bad guys in Star Wars are English dudes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's like every villain in majority of Hollywood's films are English, foppish characters. I mean, look
Yeah.
at look at the Lion King.
I was thinking that too. Scar. Yeah.
Scar, yeah.
Yeah, but see, the thing is more people speak English, so you dress them like Nazis, but then you give them English accents, and then you're kind of firing on all
It's
cylinders.
the 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Even Nazis and Roman emperors in a lot of movies have English accents.
Oh yeah.
That's very
that
true.
is true.
So there were many uprisings during the 1700s and 1800s that the British crushed. But the spirit of the Irish still remained. During the potato famine in the mid-1800s, which is sort of a story for a different day, there's a lot that goes into that. We're just going to touch on it here. It was clear that the British had no interest in helping their Irish or Scottish subjects at all. What resulted was a mass exodus of Irish people to America.
Oh,
Well, I mean, it's easier, you know. I mean, you look at what's happening, in parts of South America and Mexico now. It's like, well, you could try to flip the whole table down there, or you could just run away and go to America.
They were very inspired with American ideals too.
That would explain why a bunch of them went to Massachusetts, specifically Boston, and started up the whole like hardcore scene over there, and the ska scene for that matter.
Zach busting out with the mad music knowledge as per usual.
Yeah, that's regular old Dickie Barrett over here.
I don't know who that
Zach,
is.
I don't know who that is.
That's the impression that I get.
Oh, okay.
Mighty
Talking about
Boston.
the Mighty Boss Tones.
From Boston.
Oh my God!
The Mighty Boss.
I just now got that.
You just got that?
I
know they were
just
from
now got
Boston.
that. I didn't know they're from Boston.
It's an Easter miracle, guys. It's an Easter miracle.
I don't know if I could have said a name of their song if you didn't just tell me one of them. I would have been like, oh, they did the impression that I get. One, right?
You're welcome.
To kind of put it into perspective, a quarter of all Manhattan was Irish-born after the famine, which is a staggering amount of people. Closely following the famine that decimated Ireland, right afterwards in Ireland, there were these mass evictions of the survivors of the famine from their homes by the British. They're like, oh, you can't pay? There was a famine? Get out.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Fucking
It was pretty
dildos.
awful.
Jesus.
It was awful, yeah.
Who did they get to live there? I mean, like, if they're gonna kick people out, but everybody's starving to death, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're like, I'll just keep it empty out of spite.
Yeah. A lot of people, they would move to the cities like Dublin, and they would live in these horrible tenements where they were like stacked on top of each other, like these teeny tiny like one-room apartments where there's like a whole family of like 15 sometimes living in these. The density was just off the charts.
And at this point, I think it's something important to point out that we're not blaming any current British people for this situation.
No, I mean there's probably not a country on Earth. I mean, there's probably one, but there are very few countries on Earth that don't have blood on their hands.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
just gonna say that.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna say
We're all a bunch of monsters.
this whole story is 100% Boris Johnson's fault.
Oh, shit, he's hospitalized.
He's
got
in the
Rona.
ICU as of the day of this recording. Here's to a speedy recovery.
Yep. We wish him the best.
So with the Enlightenment ideals and the tragedy of the famine created a hotbed for radical Republican ideas, an Irish nationalistic zeal, and a deep hatred for their British overlords. In the 1890s, groups started popping up all over Ireland and New York that focused on maintaining their Gaelic language, revitalizing Irish history and culture, but more importantly, independence.
Well, they were looking to the future because they wanted to make sure people that were like 1/8 Irish could get Gaelic tattoos and then talk about them constantly.
It was a cultural revolution that preceded the political revolution, which is sort of a odd thing about this sort of conflict. Usually it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of cultural revolution, it consisted of art and theater and poetry and the Gaelic language. And so all these poems and art and plays and all of these things, they were in Gaelic, they were talking about, Irish history and things that had sort of been lost to them for a long time. They're just revitalizing that.
That's super
How
badass,
Ireland got
though.
its groove back.
I thought that
Sorry.
was through Thin Lizzy, though.
There are many groups that popped up. The Fenian Brotherhood, named after the legendary Irish warriors, the Gaelic League. But what we're going to focus on in this episode is the Irish Republican Brotherhood, or IRB is how I'm going to reference them.
Herb.
Oh, they
Okay.
were almost the rib.
Early on, a man named John Devoy, who had done 6 years in a British prison for treason, was exiled to America, where he continued to form groups in, like, Ireland. Like, he was sort of like a puppet master. He formed all these groups that were dedicated to Irish nationalism. Devoy was a committed revolutionary. He spent, like, 60 years of his life dedicated to Irish freedom.
Fucking
Even
badass.
remotely.
Well, good
He
for
was on
them.
the ground floor.
Now, Thomas Clark, he you can't talk about this whole thing without talking about Thomas Clark. It would be like talking about the Civil War without talking about Abraham Lincoln. You know what I mean? So,
Who?
Thomas Clark was born on March 11th, 1858, in an area that was deep into these sort of Enlightenment ideals. After seeing a rousing speech by a man who would later become his mentor, John Daly, he became a committed revolutionary and joined the precursor to the IRB. He would participate in riots against the police and bombing plans of the Tower of London and the London Underground.
So I have a
The
question.
regular Guy Fawkes.
Okay, so the IRB, like, I don't want to sound insensitive or anything, or, like, I'm not trying to make a joke or anything like that, but, like, was the IRB the precursor for the IRA, and that's where the IRA got majority of their ideas from?
Yes and no. The IRA is a whole other topic entirely. We are going to cover the troubles that came after this and the Civil War that came after this. We're gonna cover that later. It's incredibly complicated. I wouldn't say that it was a precursor, as more of sort of an inspiration for the IRA. But they are different, incredibly different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to actually ask Jerry. So you mentioned that John Devoy, he was in a British prison for treason. Was it treason against the British?
Yes.
Oh, I imagine,
Okay.
yeah.
Because
figured as much.
Ireland is Great Britain at this time, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
So he was living in Ireland, did things that were anti-British, and went to jail because he pissed off British people.
During some of these planned terrorist bombing campaigns, for the Tower of London and the London Underground, they were doing all these plans and stuff, but they were exposed by a police informant, and it led to Tom Clark's capture. And he was actually sentenced to life in prison in June of 1883 without hope for parole until he had at least served a minimum of 20 years.
Oh boy.
Jesus. Fuck.
That's a 19th century prison, too.
Yeah. And to the Irish especially, these prisons were a hellish place of torture and madness. Like, you weren't allowed to talk to anyone. You were pretty much in one room in the dark most of the time. He actually found out that John Daly was in the cell next to him, and they communicated by tapping on the walls, and it kind of solidified their friendship.
And that's where they invented Morse code.
Yes. Daily code.
Until a British guy named, then Morse, who was British, stole it from him and took all the credit.
Classic.
Basil Morris was his name.
Welcome to the Not Accurate History Podcast. So in 1898, there was a general amnesty declared, and Daly and Clark were released from prison. Tom Clark spent 15 years in this prison. He came out with a fervent hatred of the British.
Yeah. I was like, bet he wasn't happy about that.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say he came out with a splitting headache.
I need some ibuprofen now.
Yeah. The good stuff. The Irish ibuprofen.
The I
Whiskey.
in ibuprofen
Stands for Irish.
Clark went to stay with Daly and his family. He actually eventually married his niece, Kathleen Daly, when they went back to the United States.
Clark married Daly's
Tom
niece.
Clark did, yes.
Not Daly.
No. No. It was in New York that Tom Clark met John Devoy. And it isn't really known what the exact circumstances were, but it's generally agreed upon that John Boiz sent Tom Clark back to Ireland to take advantage of the cultural revival and to instigate a rebellion for freedom.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
It is.
Slightly
So-
opportunistic.
Oh, very this whole story is a story of opportunity, for sure. Tom Clark was a founding member of the new IRB in 1907, and he was a cautious, maybe even paranoid man, but he was the mastermind of the upcoming rebellion, and he kind of remained in the shadows and behind the scenes and underground, you know?
Behind
And
the bushes.
the reason... Yeah, the reason for that was because, you know, he was arrested because they had a mole, right?
Yeah.
And so he didn't want that to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So he was behind the scenes. He was the man behind the curtain. He was behind paintings with the spooky eyes looking back and forth. Those were his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a lot of radicals in history, Clark was in the minority. The moderates of Ireland were more or less led by a man named John Redmond of the Irish Parliamentary Party, and they didn't want violent rebellion. They advocated for something called home rule. Now, home rule is basically running your country by yourself, but still being dependent and beholden to your colonizer.
This is like a pretty much like the half measure, right? Like I feel like a lot of people that were on the they wanted kind of the return of Irish rule, but they didn't want to rattle the cage too bad. They're like, how about we just do this? This is good. Yeah. And like I said, it really feels like a half measure, and it is not radical.
You're like, you want to just go halvesies on that ruling?
Yeah.
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 Well, that and the British Empire is the most powerful country on Earth. How is little old Ireland going to stand up to that?
Yeah.
You know?
By being radical.
Grinding on rails and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh no. Anytime that a radical is brought up in this, I'm just imagining somebody doing a kickflip.
So all of them.
Yeah.
It was incredibly popular. The idea of home rule was among the majority of Ireland in 1910. When home rule was first voted on, it resulted in a hung parliament in Britain.
Nice.
Even though almost everyone knew that the Conservative House of Lords were going to strike down whatever they decided anyway, strong efforts for a home rule were made.
So they can kind of they can push the needle as far in terms of their own self-interest. They can push it as far as they want, but when it goes to the British Parliament, they just have to be like, "Nah, dog," and it's just over.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And to Tom Clark, home rule was an insult to the people of Ireland.
Sure.
That to him, it was like saying the Irish can't govern themselves. They can't organize anything, and they can't look after themselves.
The British probably
totally
literally thought that.
Oh, they did. Absolutely.
It's like governance in name only.
Yes.
Right.
And so I guess in short, we can say home rule doesn't home rule.
Yeah. More like home rule.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
So they were putting together their ragtag group of revolutionaries. There was Patrick Pearse.
Is it
writer,
pronounced Patrick?
Patrick, yes. Actually, it's Patrick is actually an anglicized version of the Gaelic name Patrick.
Oh.
Yeah, like
It's even spelled differently.
Patrick Payne from Game of Thrones. He's got a big old dick.
So yeah, Patrick Pearse was a writer, poet. He was founder and headmaster of St. Edna's Secondary School, and a very gifted orator. He was like the guy that they used to like make all the rousing speeches and stuff. There was Joseph Plunkett, and he was kind of like a sickly, extremely well-educated journalist and negotiator, and he always wore this dope-ass hat.
Nice.
So wait, he was like,
damn.
he had a cool hat, and he was sick all the time.
Yeah.
Did he work for
Okay.
Nintendo?
He had TB.
Oh, the consumption.
Yeah.
I say that every time tuberculosis gets brought up in this podcast. Yeah. The consumption.
There was Eamon Kant, a hard-nosed zealot for Irish freedom, willing to do anything for the cause. He even flew a Boer flag at his own home when he was like a kid, and the British were fighting in the Boer War, which we're also gonna do an episode on at some point. And like his dad, who was a little bit more conservative, like got super pissed off. Like it drove like a rift between him and his family.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I picture him as like the guy you have like in the group with like the facial scar, and he's like gung ho about everything, you know?
Oh yeah,
badass.
Yeah, Eamon Kant was that kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, what he did as a boy is like the equivalent of like flying like a 49ers flag in Seattle during football season.
Yeah.
Get yourself killed doing that.
Then there was Thomas MacDonagh. He was a teacher, a writer, a playwright. He was like their ideologue, you know. He was friends with Patrick Pearse. They worked at the school together.
They don't bring the fancy.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to say.
He actually named his kid Donna. So Donna McDonough was his kid's name. It's kind of funny.
He was the inspiration for the theme to Jaws.
Oh, God.
That's good.
Yes,
That is. Then there was James Connolly. He was actually an Irishman that was born in Scotland, in Edinburgh. He was a socialist, a soldier, and kind of like their commander. He was a pretty radical dude as well.
He's a radical dude.
Yeah.
Wait, so his name was James Donnelly?
Connolly.
Or Connolly, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just saying James Connolly is like, it's a very Irish name. I almost feel like his full name was James Connolly. No, not that one, the other one.
Yeah.
Then there was Sean McDermott, the good-looking, gregarious recruiter that helped gather all these guys together in the IRB. He had a case of polio, and he kind of walked with a cane. And he would like infiltrate like these groups that were popping up, you know, these Irish Gaelic cultural groups, and like some of them were just like football clubs, and he would like play a game with them, and then be like, "So we have this
English,
meeting."
right?
Yeah. You want to come to this meeting? You know?
Dude, okay, so we have two pimps in the midst of all this. We got a guy with a dope-ass hat, and we got a guy with a pimp cane.
Yeah.
Super badass.
In the middle of them all stood a man that was much older, more seasoned, and that was Thomas Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And they would hold rallies and speeches and have plays that were dosed with revolutionary dogma at the newly founded Abbey Theatre in Dublin. And they would, like I said, they would infiltrate like these moderate groups to kind of bring them to the IRB cause. And almost all of them had been to the United States at some point or another and were further radicalized in their beliefs there.
I like them joining like more moderate groups and then slowly kind of like rolling them in. They're like, fair wages. That seems like a great idea. I say we kill all the British.
It's a natural progression.
They're like, did I come on too strong? Okay, let's back it up.
Maim the British.
Yeah.
Just a light kneecapping.
Yeah. But for the north of Ireland, Home Rule was a betrayal of their British overlords that had treated them so well.
Ugh.
So in stark contrast, the north of Ireland was much better off in nearly every way imaginable than the rest of Ireland. So in Ulster, a group was formed dedicated to fight Home Rule at all costs, called the Ulster Volunteer Force. And they were extremely well armed and funded because it came from the British.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that I feel like that's like amongst the oldest tricks in the book. Like you have your subjugated people, and you throw like a chunk of them a bone, so they have a leg up, and so they have a lot to lose if the status quo is pretty much torn down.
Yeah, the Japanese in their occupation of Korea actually studied what the British did in Ireland to sort of divide and conquer the populace.
English, you were good at subjugating. Hold my beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to take your techniques and hone them to the point where they're, razor sharp like a katana blade.
Yeah.
Well, it also didn't help that the Japanese were using Gundams to conquer Korea.
Oh, yeah.
And fireballs.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Shooting key blasts out of their hands.
Yeah, and charging up to maximum strength.
From the documentaries I've seen.
Online.
For the IRB, this is exactly what they were waiting for. And they looked at the Ulster Volunteer Force and they were like, they're arming themselves, they're training themselves, good, so will we.
Yeah,
like, they couldn't wait, to like
Just
get
itching
get
for
in
a
a
fight.
with them. Yeah.
But I mean,
So Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but like, they kind of didn't really know where to start with training, right? Like, because they weren't militant,
No, these guys were not. The vast majority of them were not military men. They were run-of-the-mill kind of guys. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I was just curious, like, if this is where the stereotype of where all the Irish want to do is fight comes from, like the whole like itching for a scrap type mentality.
Well, they've always been that way in the 800 years of British domination. So maybe that is where it comes from.
Okay.
I would say it's the English. It's the British. It's their fault that they're that way.
Right, yeah.
There's nothing like being subjugated for hundreds of years to make you want to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd want to fight too.
That's why I don't want to fight. No one's ever subjugated me.
Yeah, exactly.
Just my wife. Ha! Women, right?
Yeah, they always be shopping.
Oh, there. Yeah. She's great. I'm just kidding.
In 1913, mainly in Dublin, there were strikes and protests from workers demanding better working conditions, a living wage, and freedom to form unions.
Holy shit.
Employers eventually locked out their employees from their jobs in what was called the Dublin lockout. So, like, you want to unionize? You want better pay? How about no job?
Whoever named that, like, really, they couldn't write down like 10 names and then pick one. They were like, we're gonna lock out Dublin. We'll call it the Dublin lockout.
Go
End of
go
list.
fuck yourself, Dublin act.
Yeah. Like, I can't have any profanity in it.
Now, of course, riots broke out that were put down immediately and violently. It was actually, I shouldn't say immediately, this went on for 7 months, this Dublin lockout did. James Connolly, he was like the commander guy, He was the leader of the Irish Socialist Republican Party, and he witnessed the lockout. And actually, a lot of people kind of made fun of James Connolly because they said, the Irish Socialist Republican Party has more syllables than members.
That's a solid zinger.
Whoa.
There weren't very many of them. But he saw the worst of the lockout. He saw the violence and everything perpetuated by the British. So he decided to get serious right then and there. And he formed his own Irish Citizen Army, or the ICA, in response. And this was independent of the IRB.
So when in there was the ICP formed?
You already know ICP was formed in Detroit, man.
Yeah, I know.
I actually didn't know that.
Whoop, whoop. Family.
I didn't know that.
I don't really
Yeah.
listen to a lot of Insane Clown Posse, to be honest.
You don't have to listen to their music to be into their message, man.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the songs, but their message really does get to me.
Yeah, that you should dress like a clown, drink Faygo, and, I don't know, bang whoever and get high on shit.
Yeah.
Well, also, their stuff, they're highly Christian, believe it or
Are
not.
they?
They are.
Oh, I
not
hate
that
their
surprised.
message then. No, thank you.
I was into the Fago thing, but
Yeah.
not this. Not like this.
And the big weird drug fueled sexy parties, but like
Yeah, Christianity.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I've worked one too many ICP shows that I'm sick of that shit.
Oh man,
Yikes.
there's some stories there, but let's
Yeah,
Not
let's
good for
continue.
that.
Let's continue on with the IRB and what's going on with that.
Yeah, Connolly, he was a military man. He actually deserted the British military after being disillusioned with their methods. He actually, he deserted when they were going to send him to India.
yeah.
He was like, "No, I'm not doing that."
Like, you sure you don't want to like completely fuck up the Indian people?
Yeah.
we'll let you shoot an elephant. There's tons left.
Just don't ride them.
Yeah.
Just don't ride them. You can shoot them.
He wasn't convinced that the IRB were as committed as his ICA was. Like, he's like, dude, I already got guns in the hands of men right now.
I got so many guns.
Are you guys actually arming? You know?
More guns
Is there-
than
yeah.
members?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Because the IRB was very secretive, you know, and it was hard to kind of know, aside from their rallies and stuff, what they were all about. And afraid that Connolly would disrupt their coming plans and launch some sort of insurrection on his own, the members of the IRB like met up with him to secretly join forces. I kind of picture him like walking on the street and like they pull up next to him in a car and like open the door and they're like, "Get in," and like, you know, they kind of bring him into the fold that way.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
take him to
Yeah.
a place, and then he goes, "Where am I?" And they go, "Welcome to the IRB," and
Welcome to
and then
level
they
7.
and then like yeah, and then there's like all these like contraptions and people like training and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the way I imagine it.
yeah.
And you got the tech guy, the guy who's welding stuff. You got the chick. Wait, I already did this bit, didn't I?
I
Yes,
think
you
so.
did.
Damn it.
Now, Thomas Clark took no leadership role in forming the new Irish nationalistic military movement, again preferring to remain behind the scenes and to make sure that their movement wasn't tainted with like an image of radicalism to get those moderates into the fold.
When I'm making my movements, I don't want them to be tainted either. Regardless of how radical they are. It's a poop joke, folks.
It's a poop joke, folks.
I peaked.
Yeah.
You are now listening to Peak History Boys.
Listen to the poop cast.
Instead, the leadership of the military force would go to two men named Owen McNeill and Bulmer Hobson.
Those are some
Those
names.
are great
In-
names.
Yeah. In 1914, World War I broke out, and the new vote on home rule in Britain was tabled. So the IRB saw World War I as an opportunity to strike against Great Britain while they were preoccupied fighting in the war.
That was the greatest thing I learned about this whole scenario, is they're like, oh, Britain's going to go fight in a world war? Let's kick them while they're down.
I do think it's interesting that how many like in the middle of a world war, how many rebellions will happen. You know,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Mexican
it's not
Revolution.
surprising. You know, obviously like Russia. You know, or
It's the
kinda
perfect
sucks.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
your government's distracted. Yeah,
I mean, you could try to grab a pie cooling on a windowsill whenever, but wait until that hound dog's getting in the turnip patch. Then you go for the pie.
it's like you channel dead crazy people.
So yeah, the IRB saw World War I as an opportunity to strike them, and many workers that were blacklisted from working in Dublin after the lockout, they looked to the British military as an only way to provide for their families. Like, well, can't work here, I better join the British military and be cannon fodder in World War One.
Mhm.
I like how
Yeah.
they call it World War One in this scenario.
Don't worry, there's going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
That would be disconcerting.
That would be.
It's going to be a whole franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Wait till you see the end of the second one.
Oh, it's explosive.
Yeah. Nice.
Almost spit my whiskey across the room.
So Pierce would make rousing speeches telling his fellow countrymen to not go die as cannon fodder in some rich man's war, but instead to join their movement for Irish freedom.
Sounds way better.
It worked on a lot of people, yeah. A plan was made with the utmost secrecy to take the country by force. Even insiders didn't know all the details until the last minute. Go for it.
I was just going to say, even the leadership didn't know all the plans.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, loose sink ships, so...
The plan was to take key points and government buildings in the country by force to bring all British governance to a halt. The date was set for Easter Sunday, April 23rd, 1916. Now, how would they pull this off? Well, Joseph Plunkett would secretly travel to Germany, where he would meet up with a man named Sir Roger Casement. Now, Roger Casement is one of the most important and influential characters in all of history in this time that you've never heard of.
I've never heard
he
of
was
him.
incredibly important. He was one of the people that blew the whistle on Belgium's horrible genocide happening in the Congo.
Yeah, in Africa, yeah.
Yeah, so so he's going to show up in other stories as well. So Joseph Plunkett meeting up with Sir Roger Casement, and what they were going to do is they were going to negotiate with the German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann. Does anyone remember Zimmermann from anywhere?
Wasn't he from
Yes.
Mexican Revolution?
Yes.
He was.
Yeah, the Zimmerman.
He was the Zimmermann telegram, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
For a very similar thing here, because what they wanted were guns, ammunition, and trained German officers to help with the rebellion after the initial success. Yeah, the Zimmermann telegram going to Mexico that the British intercepted was offering Mexico the exact same deal.
Interesting.
The
No
British
shit.
must have loved him.
Yeah, right.
Well, considering they're fighting a war against him,
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like he's got his fingers in a lot of pies cooling on the windowsill, if you know
they're
what I
like,
mean.
Zimmerman, can you stop trying to turn people against us? And he's like, but you make it so easy.
Yeah, well, and I mean also, it's another situation where, if the Germans would have given their support, it would have radically changed. I mean, at the very least, like the culture and geography of major parts of the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
There were two men in the fold that disagreed with this entire plan, and that was Owen McNeill and Bulmer Hobson. Now, their thinking was that there was nowhere to go inside those buildings when the British did show up, and when they did, there was nothing to do but to get shot out of those buildings.
Oh, yeah. I feel like
They want to go in the hills.
It's like
and
the
have a
Red Dead
guerrilla war.
Redemption bank job mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a second, I thought you meant get shot out of the buildings, as if like the buildings were cannons and they were getting shot into the moon. And then I realized how absurd that is. And
No, that happened.
I think it's more of a Cowboy Bebop scenario, getting shot at while you're falling out of the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Pretty much.
so they're getting shot at in the building, and then they try to escape by jumping out a window, pulling a Sharky's machine, get blasted on their way down.
Sharky's machine.
Yeah.
Just think of Venture Brothers.
Now, the German arms that turned out to be a lot less guns than they had hoped for. Turns out there were just a lot less guns, a lot less of everything that they had agreed upon.
And shittier guns.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They were older guns. Yeah, they were going to be on this boat that was disguised to look like a Norwegian vessel.
Mm.
And all the papers inside the boat were all in Norwegian, but it was all a German crew.
See, that's attention to detail I can appreciate.
Yeah.
Until you see that the guns were actually like Viking weapons.
Yeah. Now, they were set to land at a certain place at a certain time on Good Friday, in the days leading up to Easter Sunday. But the British found out about it after some miscommunications between Casement and a couple other people. They probably had help from the United States, and they found the boat. They arrested the crew, who spent the rest of the war as POWs, and they sank it.
Oh, that's fucked
And it's
up.
actually still there.
They're like, we don't care how many ugly sweaters and fish you put on this boat. We know it's really a German boat.
Yeah.
Trying to think of Norway things, like just fish.
They fucked up because the fish wasn't fermented.
Oh, it was fresh.
Yeah.
That's how they got him.
Yeah.
Now, Casement, he tried to send word to cancel the uprising. He's like, the guns are not here, cancel the uprising, postpone it, do something. And he actually sent a guy named John McGewy, I believe is how you pronounce it, with a message to stop the revolt and get different guns and distribute them somehow. But McGewy never reached Dublin, nor did the message. And actually, for a long time, people were like, where the hell did that guy go? Turns out he actually joined the British Royal Navy, survived the war, and died in the United States.
Oh.
Jesus.
Where the fuck
So-
is this guy
Yeah.
go?
He deserted with a flourish.
Yeah. And Casement, so he's like, oh shit. So he was there on a German submarine where he was going to land at a place called McKenna's Fort. It's actually now called Casement's Fort.
Oh.
Because the British knew he was coming, and they captured him there. And he was arrested. He was actually dealing with some malaria that he had while he got while he was in the Congo.
Just a touch of malaria.
They arrested him for treason, sabotage, and espionage.
Oof.
No one could rescue him. You know, a lot of people, they tried to, get him out or plead for his case. People like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, George Bernard Shaw, and W.B. Yeats, they all made passionate pleas to try to get Casement released, and that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Those are some big names too.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think that they were just like, don't give us your Irish elite telling us what to do? We're the government,
Mm-hmm.
No, the big reason why, I think, is because the British got their hands on some of Casement's diaries, which were later called the Black Diaries.
I've had some Black Diaries before.
They circulated them secretly, the British circulated them all around to discredit Casement and everything he had done with his life, because inside the diaries there is these graphic descriptions of Casement's homosexuality.
Oh.
Yeah, that'll
at a
go
How
time.
graphically
well,
talking.
Yeah, it didn't go over well.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in August of 1916, after the events of the rest of this episode, Roger Casement was stripped of his status, and he was hanged at the Peatonville prison at the age of 51. And a Catholic priest actually said of Casement, quote, "He was a saint. We should be praying to him, not for him."
See, that is super badass. The fact that a Catholic priest, where homosexuality in the eyes of majority of Abrahamic religions frown upon it, like this dude is just like,
Right.
This guy was fucking solid. He was a total badass.
Yeah,
This
he's
guy's
like,
better. This guy's better than Mother Teresa, because I mean, we all know that
Oh,
Mother
yeah.
Teresa
That is
was a
true.
piece of shit.
Yeah.
We'll talk about her later on a different episode, but yeah,
He's
she's
like-
sucked.
he's a great guy. I read his diary. It was super hot. Goes a
Ooh.
little. He skews a little bit older than I would, but all the stuff in there was pretty hot.
Yeah.
So, because of the failure of the much counted on German munitions and his disagreement with the overall Easter plan, Owen McNeill, who was, again, the commander of all of the rebel forces, a day before the rising was supposed to take place, McNeill called off the rebellion and told all the revolutionaries to stay home.
Ugh.
So members of the IRB were furious, and no one could really agree on what to do next. So they voted on it.
Mm-hmm.
Were they going to go ahead with the original plan, like what Tom Clark wanted? Or were they going to postpone the rising by one day and have it on Monday?
You're going to lose juice if you do that.
Yeah,
See, that was their argument. And they were like, yeah, you're either going to lose juice if you go on Monday, it's not going to be national like what you wanted it to be, or if you go ahead with Sunday, the lines are crossed, it's too confusing, So what do you do?
So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly. So, they ended up going with Monday. Because of this, they sent out word as best they could, but they didn't have the internet. It was a lot more difficult. So the rising wouldn't go over as gangbusters as they wanted it to, and it was kind of sequestered only in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
But the rising in Dublin was top-notch.
Well, we're gonna get to that just right now. So early that morning, on Monday, April 24th, what they called Easter Monday, James Connolly, he was at the head, and he wore a pretty cool hat during this whole thing too.
A lot of cool hats.
Again, a bunch of pimps, man.
Yeah. He was with other members of the IRB. They led their force of about 1,250 Irish volunteers to the General Post Office right in the heart of Dublin.
So they were going to do a regular old Kaczynski.
Well, if they did a Kaczynski, then they would have sent something from the post office to probably Oxford.
That's what I was
London.
thinking.
Yeah, I just got
But then
that.
you don't
Ted
need the
Kaczynski.
whole 1250 on that. You could just do one guy doing that. If anything, the 1250 is going to make it really conspicuous.
No,
We would like to mail this totally regular package that's not a bomb.
It is ticking.
No, that's why you have the 1250 just sending out to different schools. It's fine.
Oh, don't mind the 1249 behind me. They have similar but also non-lethal packages to send.
They're called care
Enough
packages.
about the Unabomber.
So they entered. Now business was going as usual. It was a normal Monday morning. There were normal people in there just getting their mail, and they were getting checks from their husbands. There's a lot of women in there getting checks from their husbands that were on the front. And they just want to get their money and get out and whatever. And all of a sudden, this big old group of dudes come in and they start shooting their guns in the air. Hey. And they're yelling, "Everyone get out of here! Get out of here!" And they're like, "We're taking this building in the name of the new Irish Republic." And everyone's like screaming. They ran out. There's all this confusion. And they immediately went up to the top and they ran up the new flag, the green, white, and orange flag, up the flagpole, pretty much without incident.
Nice.
This is the one we have.
Like everything's going according to plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, in these first moments, I can feel their hearts racing.
Yeah.
These guys are not soldiers. They're normal dudes that don't. They've shot a gun for the first time. Many of them recently.
So they're like, I don't understand why this whole uprising thing is people make it sound so hard. I mean, I'm not having any trouble. You just walk into the post office and you just start making demands.
Yeah. Does everyone know what the Irish flag stands for?
No.
What the green, white, and orange? It symbolizes the green of the Catholic Irish, and the orange of the Protestant Irish, and the white in the middle is the peace between the two.
Oh, okay.
I know not a whole lot about the Irish, even though I work with a very lovely Irish gentleman, but I do know how to say cheers in Gaelic.
Yeah. What is that?
That is Salancha.
Yeah.
Salancha.
Salancha. So Salancha to all you listeners.
Ah, yes. Especially our listeners in Ireland. After they took the building, Pierce, with Connolly and Clark at his side, he went out to the front of the building, on the steps of the building, and he read aloud the proclamation declaring Ireland free of British rule and a new Irish Republic to a very stunned and perplexed and dispassionate public. You know, there wasn't a big crowd.
Please clap.
And,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Oh,
a
Jeb.
couple of people clapped. Some people heckled him. Yeah, it was just sort of something that he felt like he should do, and then it just, I don't know, it just didn't really come out right. But the proclamation itself, you know, stands the test of time like with any other, you know, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, that kind of thing.
Do you think in his head he was like, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to read it, and everyone's going to be like, rock on, dude, and they're going to hold me on high, and everyone's going to love me, and chicks are just going to like be like, I want to blow him. No, I want to blow him. And I'm going to be so cool, finally.
We love you, Patrick.
Probably.
Make love to me, Patrick.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, several other key points were taken as well. Jacob's Biscuit Factory.
Oh,
Oh, no.
not the biscuits.
Yeah.
That's the first place I'd take. I'd be like, okay, guys, you guys go get the post office. I'm taking the biscuit factory. I can do this by myself. I don't need anyone to come with me.
I'll
Can I
get
have
this-
some of
this-
that jelly and maybe also some sausage and some cheese? I'm going to do a couple of different variations. I mean, I'm going to hold it down.
Yeah, I got it. I'll get the breweries and distilleries.
Yeah. Thomas McDonough would command the forces at the Biscuit Factory. Then there was also there was a few of them. I don't have time to name them all, but another cool one was St. Stephen's Green.
Oh,
Was another place. Michael Mallon actually commanded forces there.
Danny and I have actually been to St. Stephen's Green. I have pictures from
All
there.
right,
Yeah.
see, awesome.
You should post them on Facebook.
Is the grass always greener at Stephen's Green?
Yes, that's fact. That's not even a
Yes.
joke. Yeah.
Actually, at St. Stephen's Green, there was a prominent woman that was involved in the in this whole conflict. Her name was Countess Constance Markievicz, and she was all dressed up for the for the revolution, and she was on her way with some other people. And people actually stopped her in the street and asked her if she was going to some sort of rehearsal for something. And she was like, no. And as one police officer actually tried to stop her and her group, and she took out a revolver and just shot him.
Oh,
Oh my god,
Right
I'm
then
in
and
love.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the documentaries that I was kind of watching / listening to in preparation for this actually labeled her as bloodthirsty.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
After she shot that cop, who was unarmed, by the way,
yeah.
she went back to everybody and she was like, yeah, I killed him. She's
Again,
she was
and
bloodthirsty.
that's super
for sure.
hot.
It was
come on.
another. It was one of those Pringles situations. She just started killing everybody.
What's hot?
She's like, have you guys tried murdering people before? It feels great. I am
is-
very horny right now.
Right. Talk about radical.
Right?
Yeah, so what happened there, too, is when the British did show up at Stephen's Green, they were, being shelled, and they, for some reason, they dug trenches to, entrench themselves. But the thing was, the British had, high ground, so they could just shoot down into their trenches. And
This is
so
Star Wars.
what it sort of illustrates is, how innocent they were. The Irish rebels were they were an untrained military guerrilla force,
Mhm.
and to just dig trenches when they should have been taking rooftops and the high ground, it just shows that they didn't totally know what they were doing.
That's
They
actually
were out of
pretty
their
interesting.
depth.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
right now, the trench warfare, and they probably just heard about that, and
Yeah.
that's what's going on, in on the continent.
On the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, as amateurs, they looked at the news and were like,
Mhm.
hey, that's modern military techniques. Let's implement that.
Yeah, which really that was pretty much the first use of trench warfare.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but trench warfare, out on the front, is different than urban warfare.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Which is what they're dealing with.
Well, it's
Right.
I only from Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, the use of trench warfare in the first place was just everybody just kind of did it naturally because they were getting shot at. Like it was a natural like progression. It wasn't like somebody going, "How about trenches?" You know, it just by digging holes in the ground, you couldn't get shot at from the other side of no man's land.
Yeah, when you mount a machine gun on the ground, like you can't, especially in those days, you can't stay above the bullets.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dig underneath, so the bullets are fired over the top of you.
You go below the bullets.
Yes. So the British response, although it was delayed, when they really found out, it was a very powerful response. General John Maxwell was ordered to retake Dublin by any means necessary, and he kind of became the British military governor of Dublin.
He loved Jacob's biscuits, and he was gonna take back that factory.
They're like, not the biscuits factory.
Yeah. And they're the real biscuits, not the
like,
fake British ones that are just cookies, but they call them biscuits for some reason.
There's nothing I like more than getting some of Jacob's biscuits and going down to St. Stephen's Green. Wait, what?
So, like, when they found out what the rebels were doing, they kind of rolled their eyes. They were like, oh, they took the post office and a couple of buildings? Okay.
They can have it.
We'll just shell them with artillery.
That's not funny. It's tragic.
It's not funny. It's just, it's like
so fucked up. It's so extreme.
It's like shrugging and then getting your biggest gun.
You're like, whatever. Yeah. Drop a nuclear bomb on Dublin, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah. And it gave the rebels nothing to shoot at. When there's just bombs going off all around you, who are you supposed to be fighting? Who are you supposed to be shooting at?
Yeah.
And the shelling destroyed a lot of the city. It killed around 250 civilians and injured over 2,000.
Oh, boy.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's how the British showed how much they cared about the Irish people who weren't fighting.
Yeah.
That's very telling.
Yeah.
You're like, well, fuck them then.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, the fighting actually made front page of the New York Times 8 days in a row, which is kind of unheard of for anything.
Jeez.
Well, America was, like, strangely fascinated with this entire situation.
A shit ton of Irish people in America.
Oh, that actually makes sense. Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
And also, if it bleeds, it leads.
And a lot of people in America that were, of Irish descent or even born in Ireland, they had family back there. They were sending a lot of money back to, fund the IRB, so it was news for them, sure.
And a handful of people being like, and I thought the famine was bad. Glad I got the fuck out of there.
I was just looking up that the population of all of Ireland at the time was about 3 million. So I don't know about Dublin, but it's still a pretty good chunk of people.
It's a good chunk of people.
About 500,000 in Dublin. So, 2,000 injured out of just short of that. That's a lot of people.
Well, this was through the whole week, too.
Yeah.
250 people died. At the GPO building, Connolly was trying his hardest to hold on to his poorly trained and outgunned men. He was trying to hold them all together. And he was actually severely wounded in the leg by a ricocheting bullet to the ankle. And he couldn't walk after that.
Just a regular old Achilles, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was doing so well before that.
Yeah.
Just like Achilles.
Pierce. Yeah. Pierce kind of knew that it was the end, and they all kind of knew it was the end. Like, the British had started getting closer and closer and closer, and the fighting kind of spilled out into the streets. There were these barricades in the middle of the streets, things like that. And Pierce gave this rousing speech to the men, and that their efforts were not in vain, But one thing that we should all understand about, these, 1250 is that they were ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that certain death was a strong possibility,
Sure, yeah.
And they were ready.
Apparently not ready to shoot as good as the British guys, but ready to die.
Well, they weren't. No, they weren't trained, but
And also keeping in mind that guns back then were not. American advances in user friendliness and firearms were, decades away at this point.
Well, didn't they also have outdated guns? Isn't that what we were talking about?
They were called Stroopwafel Mark Ones, and they were automatic pistols.
Stroopwafel is Dutch. Come on now.
Is that a joke? I can't even.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a Stroopwafel is fucking Dutch.
Yeah, and it's a cookie kind of thing.
Sounds German to me.
Jesus Jones. It's with 2 O's in a row. I
didn't even know what you were talking about. I was like, Stroop, what?
A Flughafen.
Really?
A Flargenstep Mark 1.
No, there were.
It was It sounds like it was a bit of an in Bruges situation where you could tell that it's reliable because of the weight.
Yeah. I really appreciate your in Bruges reference.
The German guns were actually the Mosin-Nugent rifles, the 1891 version.
Okay.
Which I believe is a repeating rifle.
Oh, nice.
At this time, machine guns exist as well.
Yes, and they had a few machine guns, but not as many as the British.
Oh, I'd imagine. They're literally fighting a war right now. Those are being mass-produced.
Pierce, after the speech, like, even Michael Collins, who would go on to be
Liam
in the
Neeson.
subsequent conflicts after this, he would say, like, as great as a speech, orator and writer that Pierce was, now really wasn't the time for these grand flourishes,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Appreciate the
soon,
sentiment.
That's what you
right?
get when you get authors and poets to...
Yeah, poets, and actually, all of their correspondence between each other were all like written very well and very flowery.
Yeah, well, they are Irish. There's a lot of authors.
I love it.
A lot of writers.
Yeah. Soon, though, all was lost. The ragged leaders at the GPO, they kind of fled to a different location to kind of discuss what the hell they were going to do. And they kind of got together and they discussed a surrender. And they drafted one, and they all signed it, and they sent it to all the rest of their commanders across Dublin, saying, "Stand down. We're gonna surrender to the British." Now, Eamon Kant, who was actually doing pretty well by that point, he got the message. He didn't believe it at first, but he said, "You know what? My men are willing to die for this cause, and so am I. I'm gonna actually."
Do you think that they were like, "Hey, surrender," and he said, "No, I can't"?
Ah!
Thanks, guys.
He would put it to a vote with his men, whether or not they wanted to surrender or die right here fighting. He told them that if they surrendered, that pretty much himself and the rest of the leaders of the IRB would most certainly hang, but assured that the rest of the rank and file soldiers probably wouldn't hang or be executed.
I mean, who has the rope?
Yeah. You can reuse the same rope.
Don't tell them that.
Well, you also know he was playing in the background Cheap Trick's Surrender. Just kind of...
Was that before that they used it for Carnival Cruise Line commercials?
Did they? I remember Lust for Life being in one of those.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
like,
They don't have the liquor and guns line in there, but yeah, because
it's the drums, the boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom.
Long story
boom.
short,
He pops like, I also need a new yacht.
that is 100% true. I don't know if it's actually Carnival Cruise, but I remember that song is at the beginning of Train Spotting, and those wires are crossed in my brain, so I often think of Carnival Cruise Lines and Train Spotting at the same time.
They eventually all decided to surrender, and all of them did. And over that whole week of intense fighting, the British would suffer, and the numbers are a little different depending on who you ask, but somewhere around 143 casualties the British would suffer, and the rebels somewhere around 66 died.
I mean,
Now,
not bad.
yeah,
Not bad for a bunch of amateurs.
yeah. Now, the British were pissed that the Irish volunteers would do something like this while they were at war.
After we've given them so much.
Yeah.
God.
We were such benevolent overlords. How dare you?
We let you be cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah. We let you join the army. You could go to India.
Yeah. Now, General Maxwell wanted to make an example out of these men. So without a trial or any sort of representation or any jury or anything like that, it was decided that the leaders of the rising would be executed by firing squad, one after the other.
Oof. This is fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
The documentary I watched had interviews with the children of some of the people that were in the uprising. I mean, clearly they were very old, but like remembered it perfectly. Having conversations with their parents, where their parents were pretty much like, "Well, I'm gonna go get killed tomorrow. I love you. I did it for Ireland." And like, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, and a couple of those people that were interviewed in that documentary too were actually the wives of some of these men that were being executed.
Yeah.
That were allowed to see them before they were executed.
Oh, wow.
One of them, I can't remember who, but one of them was actually married 8 hours before he was shot to his wife.
Oh, wow.
Short honeymoon.
Well, I was about to say,
something.
Was that just for the conjugal visit?
Well, he probably knew he was going to die. So it was sort of...
Something I forgot to mention. Before the British could really respond with their full force, they actually unleashed this group called the Black and Tans.
Oh, yeah.
From the color of their uniforms. And what they were is like, they were prisoners and like knaves, roustabouts.
Oh, yeah.
And
brigands?
Suicide Squad.
Brigands.
Yo.
And they were unleashed onto like the Irish populace.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah. And they were like robbing people and setting fires and stuff.
I feel like we've made a
I'm
Suicide
gonna
Squad.
burn everything.
It was in Mexican Revolution we talked about, like a Suicide Squad style situation.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So basically, this is where that shitty drink is named after, right?
Yeah.
Black
That
and
group,
Tans.
yes, it is actually. And I've actually had a guy whose wife was Irish tell me, he's like, yeah, I would never drink one of those because of this.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to get your
Black
ass
and
kicked.
Yeah. They were bad guys. Constance Markievicz, actually, she was arrested. She was actually held in prison with everyone else. But because she was a woman, her death sentence was commuted.
Oh, wow.
And she actually said to them, and I quote, "I do wish your lot had the decency to shoot me."
She's badass.
Which is badass.
Bloodthirsty.
She
That's
fucking
a total
killed a
bad
cop.
bitch.
So, on May 3rd, 1916, Patrick Pearse, 36, Thomas McDonough, 38, and Thomas Clark were executed. He was 58. Were executed by firing squad. Now, Tom Clark gave his wife Kathleen this message to his beloved Ireland before he could be executed. Quote, "My comrades and I believe we have struck the first successful blow for freedom. And so sure as we are going out this morning, so sure will freedom come as a direct result of our action. In this belief, we die happy."
Hell yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and it was true, and I think that sentiment was shared across pretty much all of the freedom fighters that were executed after this. That they thought that this was going to be, it was going to get an ember started, and
That they
it
died
would
for
lead
something.
Yes.
to a free Ireland,
Right.
and so
Yes.
it was worth it.
The spark of
Yes.
rebellion.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Like Star Wars.
yeah, like Star Wars.
Well, and also it's a very romantic look on the future of the future outcome, and that's the thing that I kind of gravitate towards and see and recognize. And I'm sure Irish children who heard these stories that wanted the freedoms and everything, they also felt that sort of romantic let's fucking get the hell out of this situation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. It was an inspiration for sure. The next day, on May 4th, 1916. Joseph Plunkett, 28. William Pierce, who was Patrick Pierce's little brother, he was 34. Edward Daly, 24. And Michael O'Hanrahan, 39. They were executed all on the same day.
Jesus.
I mean, you don't have to have all those syllables. You can go easier on them, you know.
On May 5th, the next day after that, John McBride, 47, was executed. And on May 6th, Eamon Kant, 34, Con Colbert, 27, Michael Mallon, 41, and Sean Houston, 25, were also executed. The final day was actually May 12th, and they skipped a couple of days. And that was the day where they executed Sean McDiarmida, 33, and James Connolly, 47. Now, Connolly, if you remember, he was injured. He had the bullet go through his ankle.
Right.
And he couldn't walk out there, and he couldn't stand for his execution.
So they had to heal him up before they shot him.
No. They tied him to a chair and shot him unceremoniously.
Oh, really?
Cool.
And it was one of those things where like, right after they had the rebels had surrendered, the people of Dublin and of Ireland, really, they looked around at their destroyed city and all of this stuff that was their fault, let's be real, and they like spat on them and yelled at them and threw shit at them because they had destroyed their city and they didn't know what for, right?
Yeah.
But because General Maxwell made this fatal mistake of executing each member in this very, it wasn't in public,
No.
but in sort of a public fashion, one after the other like this. He didn't take them out back secretly. He didn't throw them in prison to rot forever. He didn't do anything like that where they could have been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
He made martyrs out of them by doing this.
That was a
And
misstep.
It
Well,
was.
he probably wanted to teach
because
everybody a lesson, but it backfired.
it backfired famously. Because, yeah, as news spread of the fact that these men were just lined up and shot, including one guy that couldn't even stand for his execution, these people were like, what are these guys dying for? And why are they so willing to do it? And they all kind of realized, like, everyone around the world and everyone in Ireland slowly began to realize that, they're dying for our freedom here, And people afterwards really flocked to the cause of Irish independence. And it all started with these very, very brave individuals.
At the end of the day, I think, they knew. I think they knew what they were doing would be a sacrifice, and
Yes,
but one that would, it was a very selfless sacrifice.
100%.
Yeah.
I can't help.
And yeah, like people.
So
Go ahead.
I can't help but think that because they looked at the U.S. And other countries that were going through rebellions as inspiration, they saw like the Boston Tea Party, they saw the Revolutionary War, and they're just like, you know what? We might have lost this shit, but it's gonna spring like inspiration to our next of kin. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and
Exactly.
and across all those, I guess the big three would be, the French, the American, and then the Irish. I think across all three, there's big sacrifices. Maybe history books really
Yes.
shrink things down and just have the part where things worked out. But like, there's a reason why we have the phrase "heads will roll."
Right.
I mean,
right.
a lot
Yep.
of people fucking died during the French Revolution. A lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Heads will
And
roll.
so-
Also a great song by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I did want to get more into some of the other members of the Easter Rising as well. I just, there's so many, and it doesn't really matter what I say as like this person's like the most important, that person's the most important. There's always going to be somebody that's like, well, it wouldn't have happened without this person, And they're right, like without all of these people working together, none of this would have happened.
It's a whole domino effect, is what it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And
So
that being said, the people that we listed are the most important. And if you have different people that you say, you might not, maybe we're just right. We'll just leave it at that.
And by domino effect, we're saying please send us Domino's Pizza, care to Jerry Nash
Oh.
at.
Yes. Don't list my don't list my address.
Yeah, the only domino effect I care about is the effect I feel after I've ate a whole medium to myself, dipping that in ranch the whole time. And it's
Is Domino's still delivering?
yeah.
I think
went
they
to
are
see
an
that.
essential
thank
business.
God for that. I'm gonna probably get some of that.
A lot of places are doing takeout right now still.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty easy to order food right now.
Get on there, get on your pizza profile, and make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we figured, Easter would be the best time for this. And I'm so glad we did this story. It's incredible. It has a lot of similarities to the Mexican Revolution.
Yeah.
It's just it's a really great story of bravery.
Well, it's similar because it's a revolution, but it's uniquely Irish, and the
Yes.
time of the year really really lined up for us, and also it's a story that I mean, I don't know, maybe just in this country historically, you're really educated in a bubble, and so having this opportunity to learn more about the history of other parts of the world and parts of the world that on a surface level are already interesting to us. It's super cool. It's super cool to hear about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's
The thing
also,
that really disappoints me about the American educational system, though, is that since we are a country built on rebellion, there isn't a lot of history about other countries' rebellion.
Yeah.
It's so fucking
we did it
disheartening
the best.
for me.
Yeah.
Well, shit's
sure.
status quo now, and they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
The U.S. cares about one thing: making money.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Welcome to capitalism.
well,
Welcome
and,
to the
and
machine.
and
Yeah.
back on the topic of this coming into our purview. Once again, special thanks to the viewer who recommended this episode, and to any other viewer who has recommended an episode. We
I think you
can't
mean
wait.
Listener.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that
Well,
too.
maybe they're looking at maybe they're looking at the Spotify list the whole time.
I do know. Yeah. We are on YouTube, so you can look at our
Look at
logo.
the thumbnail.
The thumbnail. And view that.
Yeah, treat that like a real artsy movie. Anyway, I can't wait to get to the stories of our other listeners. This was such a good story.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the timing
Thank you again.
worked out.
Yeah, so
It did.
so if anyone has anything for like Earth Day or Arbor Day or something, if there's an uprising or something, a story of heroism in there, just send it our way. We'll talk about it and make it our own.
Follow us on
That's
the
a
social
wrap.
medias. Email us at historyboispodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, let us know.
Yep.
Let us know your stories. The stories,
Yeah.
well, not your personal stories. We don't care about those, but
Yeah,
the
don't
stories
tell me about your
from
life.
history. Yeah, that you want us to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have proven
And we
that we will do them.
I'm Jerry. I'm a history boy. Signing off. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
I'm Zach. I'm a history boy, and I'm just hanging out.
I'm Tyler, and I'm also a history boy, and I'm also hanging out, specifically my junk out of my pants, because I'm doing it from home.
Yeah. I'm wearing pants. Again, I don't know why. I don't have to. I'm Chris Whedon, history boy, wearing pants. And you all at home, all you history boys, thank you so much.
And wear your pants. Or not.
If you leave the house, wear pants. Something covering up your... and don't leave the house right now. Unless you have to.
Yeah, don't be a dildo.
Stay at home and take off your pants.
Yeah, stay at home, take off your pants. I would like to go out this summer. We probably will not ever leave the house again. And that's just fine. That's how we live our lives now.
All right.
Zach, do the thing.
Love you. Bye.
It's silly or saying you. We had a lot of fun. We'll see you next time. Or I guess we won't, whatever.